Well, I'm in a winter wonderland, which has slowed the anticipated delivery of my new phone, so as I suspected, my research ability has suffered quite a bit. Thankfully, I can pull a video off the top of my head because of my aviation background. Canada, I would like to discontinue my free trial of your weather now. Now, before you click away, hear me out. I know from my analytics that me covering creationist apologetics or Hovind related nonsense is some of my most popular content that I make, and that's coming. It's just been delayed. So help me feed the algorithm, and you get to see Kerbals being sacrificed for science. I was going to use my flight simulator, but I can't seem to find my controls for that, or the game for that matter, so little green men will have to be sacrificed. Today, we're revisiting the concept of lift. Kerbal Space Program isn't a perfect sim, but good enough for what we need here. I've been meaning to revisit this because my original video on Lift wasn't really the best. It was when I was first starting my channel, and I've never really been satisfied with my explanation of it. Like I said in the original video, a plane, or anything that flies for that matter, does so by balancing four key forces. Thrust, which is countered by drag created by air resistance, and lift, which is countered by gravity. If you balance these four forces, you get straight and level flight. We'll be using the Steerwing A300 aircraft, which was preloaded with Kerbal Space Program, as an example. Lift is best described as differences in air pressure above and below the wing surface. Now, Benelli's theory isn't perfect, but it will get us where we need to go, so to speak. Basically, air flows faster over the top of the wing than the bottom. This creates an area of low pressure above the wing and high pressure below it. This difference causes the air under the wing to try to push up to fill that lower pressure area, and in the process pushes against the bottom of the wing, creating lift. If you wanted to get off the ground and into the air, that's okay, but without an ability to maneuver, you'd eventually be in a craft that would lawn dart its way back to the ground. For those that didn't grow up in the 80s and 90s, lawn darts were an accident waiting for a skull, as adults would sling 12-inch long nails with plastic fins into the air while... Never mind. Suffice to say, it's bad when a hunk of metal hits the ground or something in the way of the ground. That's where control surfaces come into play. There are three channels or directions that ailerons deal with. Pitch, which is up and down on this airframe, that's controlled by these tail fins back here. Roll, which is controlled by the surfaces over here on the main wings. And yaw, which is this guy on the vertical stabilizer. So let's take this guy for a trip around the block and see what we're looking at. Brakes off, stability control on, engine on, and throttle up. Because of the sheer mass of this simulated aircraft, it takes a little bit to get going, just like any other comparable airframe would. So it's not too bad. Let's pitch up a little bit, stow the gear, throttle back down a little bit since we're in the air, and we're flying. Awesome. So, now that we're in the air, you can see that I had to actually pitch up a little bit to get off the ground, and it's no different in reality. You will begin to float, for lack of a better term, as air flows over the wings, but you have to get the ball rolling with a little bit of input to get off the ground. So now that we're in the air, you can see what each control surface does a little bit more clearly. Yaw allows you to fine-tune your direction, and here it's kind of jerky, but the point is you can gradually turn a little bit. Now, with roll, you can use that in combination with pitch channel to make far more dramatic changes in direction, allowing you to turn around a lot more quickly than you otherwise would with just the yaw control itself. Now, in one of my previous videos, we did talk about how the loss of an engine would create a lot of problems, specifically the airframe pulling to the side of the non-functioning engine, and simulating that here without this stability control assist it tends to want to corkscrew down. But with it on, we can do that. So let's shut down this engine and see what happens. Now, as you can see, it did twist a little bit as it started to pick up some drag, and you can see the stability control has actuated the yaw fin to try to stabilize the aircraft, to try to keep it from drifting in the direction of the non-functioning engine, but it's still doing it a little bit. If we turn the engine back on, that's going to stabilize out and everything will be all right again. Now, like I said, gaining altitude is not easy with one engine, and trying to maintain level flight is difficult. It's doable, but it's extremely difficult because, like I said, you lose about 80% of your total thrust capacity in at least a twin-engine aircraft. Now, there are a couple of things that we haven't actually talked about yet. We haven't talked about flaps or spoilers. Now, this simulator does not have flaps or spoilers, but basically what flaps and spoilers do is they perform a couple of key functions. Flaps on a commercial airliner, or any plane for that matter, provide additional lift to the airframe at slower speeds that you would have during takeoff and landing. It does this by adjusting the entirety of the back wing surface to catch more air and generate more lift. Now, spoilers, on the other hand, are not what you think of when you generally hear the name spoilers. When people hear about spoilers or talk about spoilers, usually they're talking about cars, but that's not what a spoiler does on an airplane. A spoiler on an airplane does exactly what the name implies. They're panels on the main wing surfaces that pop up when the gear touches the ground to disrupt the flow of air over the top of the wing. This slows the air down and disrupts that entire low-pressure system above the wing, meaning that there's no more lift being generated, and it stays on the ground and doesn't bounce. Speaking of, let's see if I can stick the landing. Well, yeah, I didn't stick that. Obviously, I'm a little out of practice. Came close. Just came in just a little bit too hard. What you're supposed to do is you're supposed to kind of float over the runway, but since I'm out of practice on any flight simulator, especially this one, I came in just a little bit too steep. That's what happened there. So, yeah, that's a bad thing. But the pilot survived. So, now we'll see what happens when you fly an aircraft at absolutely insane speeds in atmosphere, because I did say that Kerbals would be sacrificed. We'll use a smaller aircraft of my own making for this. Now, before I end this video, I did have an idea to try to use this and another flight simulator when I get it up and running to talk more on aviation and space topics. If that isn't your speed, I have a list in the description of games that are available to me, so let me know in the comments what you would prefer. And now, let's see what happens with this.